Hi, I'm Michelle Ashby, Branch Operations Officer.
I'm Hugh, Loans Recovery Officer.
My name is Denise Johnson. I'm an administrative assistant, and I'm another Bajan.
And I'm another Bajan.
And I'm another Bajan.
Hello, I'm Gail Niles, Chief Marketing and Member/Customer Experience Officer here at the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union Limited. If you're another Bajan, this is where you belong.
Hi, I'm Mary Graham, and I'm another Bajan. Growing up was filled with fun, laughter, and challenges. As a 7-year-old, I attended Hainsbury Girls' School. I like to say girls' school, because at that time we lived in Station Hill, St. Michael. It was a carefree time for my mother, who's a teacher. My father was a journalist. And my brother, my 2 cousins, because mommy looked after them when their mother went to UK to live. And so it was a time of freedom where we could stroll the avenue, go for walks. I walked to school with the other children. And at that time, I think it was from that time I came to a sort of consciousness that because I was a teacher's daughter, at end of term when others were scraping the desks and would change their uniforms on the wrong side to scrub desks and all of that, I had to sneak and do it because I wasn't allowed to do it. But I used to enjoy taking off my shoes and socks and scraping the desk and scrubbing the desk. I was a member of the Brownies. And so I looked forward to that in the afternoon, just like we are now outside, because I'm an outdoors person, outside playing ring games and all sorts of things. So I could say that my childhood was a happy one in which I could do anything I wanted to do. It was funny that just a few days ago, I was remembering, because I used to go to St. John because my grandmother lived in St. John. And so we would have to go up there to spend time with her. I didn't like the country at that time. I only liked it at Easter time, where we could go in the cane ground and fly the kites and play with the others outside in the moonlight. But even then, you were conscious of, I remember, I may be going all over the place, but I remember going to children's party. And I didn't have to have a ticket to get there, so I didn't know. I thought all children were allowed to come to the Rediffusions children's party without a ticket. Because my father worked at Rediffusion at the time, I suppose I had that privilege. But one Saturday, someone who was new to the radio station was there, and he walked around asking for tickets. And of course, I did not have a ticket. So he said, "You can't be here because you don't have a ticket." Not want to argue, I went outside and I went to the newsroom where my father was, and he said to me, "But why are you here? Why are you not enjoying the party?" And I said, "It's okay, I don't feel like it this morning." And later the gentleman came in and he said, "You are Lawrence's daughter. I didn't know you were his daughter." And inside I said, "But being his daughter doesn't give me an edge on anything." And right there and then I felt that deep hurt inside for all the little children who did not have a ticket, who would have liked to come and share in the fun and everything, but were not allowed to. And I think it was from that early age that I felt a need to be with those who society put on the fringes. And I think that has impacted my life and enabled me to be where I am today. Children still have a special place in my heart. In those days I grew up, when I remember going to the cathedral, that is where our church was. And I would be there, this is when I was about 10 or 11. And I was there saying, but I can read a lesson. Why can't I read a lesson in church? And why are men doing all of these things and women are not supposed to do them? I remember even arguing with the postman and saying, well, how come they don't have any women who carry out the mail? And he just looked at me like, what are you asking? And I said, one day though, there'll be women who carry out the mail. There'll be women who are doctors. So from those early days, although it was a time of fun, it was a time of consciousness of me being a female in a male world. One thing I must say, and I always credit my father with this, I am his first child. And in those days, many fathers would have wanted a boy to be their first child. But he never made any issue of that. I remember Mommy saying when they left the hospital with me, Daddy took us to St. Cyprian's, because that is his church, or was his church. And he offered me to the Lord. And that has stayed with me all my life. When it was trips overseas, well, my brother would say he's younger than I am. He didn't want to go. And so Daddy would take me. However, when I was a bit older, my parents separated. And I remember Mommy said, I asked him, Mommy, when I was 13, I said, but why are you putting up with all this? Mind you, I love my father. Huh? And she said to me, because you love your father so much, I cannot do anything that would cause you pain. And I said, Mommy, but you have your life to live. I will get through this. Shortly after that, she went to study in England. And so we had to move to St. John with my grandmother. I miss my mother terribly, but Daddy was there. And Mommy was the person, and as I sit here on this bench, in her final days, we got this bench for her so she could come out and she could enjoy the outside. And I would sit with her. This is the first time since she died that I am sitting on this bench. But she was the kind of person who said when she grew up, she didn't know anything about life. And she always said if she had a daughter, she would not shelter her from life. She would answer her questions. She would give her the freedom to be herself and not push her in any mold. So I could say that I had a good childhood. Mommy was not one to hover. She allowed me to be and become the person I wanted to be. I always remember my brother who is younger than I am. In those days, we would say he was not academic. And Mommy sent him to the Paragon because she had taught with the principal and the owner of the Paragon, and she said, just teach him the basics. You know, you hear of some teachers, because they happen to be the parents of the children, they push them to do this and they push them to do that. But she never pushed us. And I remember him saying one day when he went to the Polytechnic, he said he thought school was for eating lunch. He never thought it was for learning. But I must say it was from there that he really came into his own. And he was the first to come to Cayman Islands. Well, Daddy came first, then my brother came. And he was a mechanic, a very good mechanic. But then he said he wasn't satisfied with being that. And so he went to Teterboro College in New Jersey to do aircraft maintenance. And I always say if Mommy had pushed him to become whatever she may have wanted him to be, he would not have been the man he is today. Neither would I have been the woman I am today. Because I remember when I said I wanted to go into teaching, she said to me, now it is a very thankless job. And if you want to go that road, you have to go to the Ministry of Education yourself. And as I went to the Ministry of Education, everybody was saying, but this is Velda's daughter, and Velda comes in here and she gets jobs for so many people. So how come Velda's daughter has to come for herself? But that is how Mommy was. She raised us to be independent. And I am thankful for that. From Hinesbury, I went to Queen's College. And I remember there were 4 of us from Hinesbury who went to Queen's College at that time. And 2 of us, my best friend, because she came to Hinesbury at 7 too, and from the next day we were friends, and we have remained friends to this day. Although our paths have sort of veered, we still kept in touch with each other. At Queen's College, there were guides, and so I became a member of the first Barbados Guides. Loved outdoor cooking, loved hiking. Although I was a fat little girl, that did not keep me back from going hiking and doing all the other things that girls did. One thing that really stands out from that time, the first time I went on a hike, I remember Norma Shorey and Hilary Barry Smith, and I could not keep up with the others, but they came back and they walked beside me, thus ensuring I had companionship along the way and I could end the hike. Camping. I loved camping, and I remember when they had the international guiders camp at Foundation, and I was there. The camp was divided into 2 weeks, but I was there for all 2 weeks. Mommy was at the camp too, but nobody knew I was her daughter, and nobody knew she was my mother. It was at the end of the camp when I came to her and said, Mommy, something or the other. And I remember Mrs. Leacock, Sybil Leacock, saying, but Velda, this is your daughter? Nobody would think that this was your daughter because she didn't come running to you about anything and you didn't come running to her about anything. So I think in my teenage years though, I had a lot of responsibility because when Mommy went away, remember I said she had cared for my 2 cousins too and my brother, and when we moved to the country, they became my responsibility in the way because of course Granny's cooking wasn't the kind of cooking like I was accustomed to. And so I used to make sure that I would cook the sort of things that we would like. But even there, I made new friends, and I had to catch the bus in those days when I was in St. Michael. Like Daddy would take me to school and all that, but I had to catch the school bus. And I remember just being lost in the clouds as I traveled from St. John to town in the bus. I think I have a very creative imagination. And so we would call it contemplation these days, but I used to be lost in the clouds on the way down. When Mommy came back then, and one thing I must say, by then she and Daddy had separated, but she never made us choose. Whenever he wanted us, we were free to go with him. And so you didn't have that, like how some children experience today. They don't know if they should say they want to go with daddy, or we didn't have that sort of challenge. At school, one thing I must say about it is something that was in my recommendation when I was leaving. When I got about 15 years old, there was a Brownie group at Pax Hill, and I went and was a junior leader for that group. I remember quite well on my leaving school in a referral, the late Dr. Elsie Payne saying, Mary will do well in an office, but at the same time, we have discovered that she has a deep love for children. And I hold that dearly to this day, because not only did she see me as a student, but she saw me as a person. She saw me as someone who cared for children. She saw my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, although I did not share them with anyone. Because even at that time, I can remember I enjoyed things, but I am a very private person. And I hold my dreams and everything, I held them quite near to me. So it wasn't surprising that I chose the teaching profession. And even now, I say to people, I am a teacher at heart. On leaving school in 1972, I went to teach at West St. Joseph, which is now Grantley Adams Memorial. I remember going, just before going there, I went to a camp there with the guides. Queen's College, West St. Joseph, stables. I said, I hope this is not the school they're going to send me to. But could you imagine? It was the school they sent me to. And it was a beautiful year. I was given a fourth form as form mistress. I was just a few years older. But I remember at the end of the first term, Christmas, I remembered we would have parties at school and all that. And I went to Kentucky, and I told the children before we would have a party after school, I'm going to get Kentucky drinks, all that. And I remember this young lady saying, I'm going to bring a cake. I tell you, it was as if we were getting married, because it was a huge cake with icing and everything. I still have a fondness for those young people, because they enabled me to be the kind of teacher and the kind of woman that I am today. I was very naive in those days, and I am not an artist by no means. And when November came around, would never forget, I wanted a coat of arms for my classroom. And I gave a challenge, a competition to the children. Whoever did the best one would get a prize, and it would go up in our classroom. Well, there was this young man. He gave a lot of trouble. Remember, I gave the challenge, and I was the judge and the jury, my naivety. The night I sat there, and by far, his was the best. No doubt about it, his was the best. Next day I came to school, and I was going to announce the winner. But I went from the third place to the second place and then announced the first place. And I called his name. And I still see the beam that was on his face as he came up to receive a pen. A nice fountain pen it was. And for the rest of the year, I thought it was my imagination at first, but his behavior improved. Would you believe, 10 years later, 1982, I was here, but I went to Barbados to have my second son. And those students had a surprise party from me. And at the party, they spoke of all I had done for them, how I had touched them during that year. And all that they had achieved was because of me. I cried. And I said, no, it was not because of me. You had it within you. You just needed someone who would see what was in it and give you the motivation to become what God intended you to be. Well, this young man was at the party, and he went back to November of 1972 when the challenge was issued for that coat of arms. He said he knew that his would be the best, but he spent many days working on it and throwing them in the garbage until he was satisfied that he had done his best. And he said when he came the morning, my maiden name is Small, he said, now let me see if Miss Small likes me. He said, when you called my name, the price did not matter. I said to myself, somebody likes me. I have to start to love myself. I tell that story over and over again, even to children at assembly. And I said, Lord, I always say, Lord, I thank you for not allowing my prejudice to get in the way. And if he ever sees this, he knows. I will just use his initials. It's a C and a G. But I have never forgotten him. Neither have I forgotten those children in 4B Upper at West St. Joseph. They are still in my heart, and they journey with me along the path. I went to Erdiston Teachers Training College in 1973. I went back to West St. Joseph for a little while, but I did not stay there very long. And I came to the Cayman Islands in 1978, 46 years ago. When I first came, I said my husband and I decided we would stay for 4 years. And the 4 years has turned into 46 years. I have been back to Barbados. At times, like when we built our house, I went home and I worked for a little while at, it is no longer there anymore, in Roebuck Street, Roebuck Secondary. I worked there for a little while. And as soon as I was getting in the niche, because I was given some young men who mostly were from the country, and a program was started that I would accompany them to Pelican Village, and they would learn the trade, And then I would come back and do a little bookkeeping and motivate them how they could start their own business. And I was really loving that. I remember at one time I tell them, I don't have to police you. You get there on your own. I trust you. I will be there. And then when they were finished, I said, you go back to school. I will meet you there. And my husband said, just as I was enjoying that and a space was made that I continue, he said, you need to come back to Cayman. And so I'm not sorry. And so I came back. I have had wonderful days teaching. I believe that I have touched many children as they have touched me. I am a firm believer in that. Even as my children learn from me, I learn from my children, that they have quite a lot to offer. In 1996, I left the classroom and I went to the Theological Seminary in Jamaica. Why did I do that? I did not go to be a priest. I went because I wanted to be able to walk with families so that they could better parent their children. But I wanted to do it from a theological perspective. One thing happened after the other, and in my third year, I remember I'm a member of the Lions Club of Tropical Gardens, a charter member and a former president. And I came back home, and there was a lady who our signature project was and still is breast cancer. And she was out of remission. And because I was a theological student, they asked me to prepare a little service. And while praying and preparing, I knew she needed to be anointed. But in our tradition, Anglican, if I didn't say it before, if you're not ordained, you cannot anoint. And so I said nothing to anyone. I went along with what I had done. And during the little ceremony, there was a lady there who whipped out her oil and she anointed her. And in my spirit, I knew that what needed to be done was done. And so I went back and I offered myself for ordination. I was supposed to spend 4 years, but I had finished everything in 3 years. So I went to the president of the college, who is Anglican, who is now the Archbishop of the West Indies, although he will soon demit office. And I asked him if I could use the year to go to Atlanta to do a program in clinical pastoral education, because the Lutherans at the college did that. And I remember one coming back and talking about his hospital experience. And I felt that was what God needed me to do. And so I went to Atlanta. I do not like the cold. It was at this time very cold. And I went on the train and I looked at all the faces, and not one face I could recognize. And there I started, was to be 4 months in clinical pastoral education. During the second week, in our peer group, our supervisor was asking us to share our experiences. And all I could think about, I said, what a plunge. And she said, what do you mean by that? I said, I feel as though I am on the edge of the swimming pool and somebody has pushed me in the deep, deep end. And mind you, I am not a swimmer. And she looked me in the eye and she said, are you drowning? And I replied, I will not drown, because I know that even if my God sends a straw, I can hold on to it and I will not drown. It was a very deep and powerful experience working in the hospital as a chaplain. I remember one day being called to a ward where all I was told is a young man who was born quite okay, but along the lines, things had infected his body and the organs were closing down. And his father was in the room. The young man wasn't in the room. The father was in the room. The young man was somewhere else, because the next day he would have to pull the plug on his son. As usual, as I prepared to go to the door, I said, Lord, you know what is behind that door. Prepare even as you prepare me. And I went in and I said, hi, my name is Mary and I'm the chaplain. He said, and I'm an atheist. And I looked at him and I said, you are a parent and I am a parent. Can we connect on that level? And he invited me to sit. And he shared the story of his son. And he also shared that it was only the son that was keeping the marriage together. But when he pulled the plug on his son, it would also signal the end of his marriage. But one thing that stood out for me, in the face of all his pain, he was giving life to others, because the organs that were not contaminated, he was giving to give others life. And after we had finished, and I had said to him how much I admired him for what he was doing, he said to me, mind you, this is USA, he was Caucasian, I am black. He said, would you mind if I hug you? And I said, you're free. And we hugged each other. And when I left that room, my question was, who would allow a man who claims there is no God to share so deeply with a woman who claims there is a God? Only God in his love and mercy. And that was just one of the encounters that enabled me to look beyond how we present ourselves or the titles we wear to the heart. After I finished the 4 months, I came back. I was ordained deacon, and they offered me a year's residency. Now, there were 3 hospitals in Atlanta, Tri-Hospital CPE Center, a children's, a Catholic, and the one that I served most, that has everyone. For a girl who didn't like the hospital, yes. And I had to choose which one I wanted to do my residency at. And because I love children, I did not know if I could minister to children who were sick and dying, I must add. And funny enough, I went like, Lord, wherever this ends, I'm going. Wherever my finger ends. And when I looked at my finger, it was the Children's Hospital, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Scottish Rite. And I called my supervisors because they were waiting for an answer. And I said, I don't want to, but it is children's. And they said, we were praying that that is the one you would have chosen because that was the one that would stretch you. And it was the hardest year of my life, but it was the best year of my life. I remember, and I would say this because I'm a Bajan, and this father was a Bajan. Who would think that in Atlanta I would have, or he would have to minister to me? Because he was a painter, and while painting, his son slipped into the swimming pool. And summer, you could look for that coming in the hospital. A lot of drownings or near drownings. And as chaplain, the doctor would make the prognosis and then hand over everybody to the chaplain. And the little boy was put on a ventilator. But after a while, he couldn't be there anymore. And the father had to make the hard decision to take his child off the ventilator. But faith. He said, I am going to take him off because his life is in God's hands. And whatever is God's will for him, I will accept. That little boy did not die. He would have had some challenges in his life. But that little boy went home. And I have experienced so many miracles in that children's hospital. Even the miracle of children saying, my mommy and daddy, they don't want to hear that I'm going to die, but I'm going to, and it's okay. So yes, a year that has brought me to the point I came back and I ministered, but my ministry is not, I remember one of my rectors said to me, he comes alive presiding at the altar. And I said, I come alive sitting beside someone who is sick. Because I believe that that is the call from God to me. If I could just go back for a while, because I said for someone who didn't like hospitals. But it goes back to, in Barbados, I was visiting, and my husband's cousin, he was dying from bone cancer. And I remember going to visit him. He was at home, and he was in bed, eyes closed, and all these oxygen bottles were around. And he is someone who was really loving to us as a young family. And I remember going into the room, other family members around, and feeling this love and touching him. And him opening his eyes and looking at me and saying, that touch went to my soul. I was so scared. I removed my hand immediately and shot out of the room. I wanted to know if I had hurt him. What did he mean? Well, I couldn't go back the next day because the next day he died. and I shut down from hospitals until I did this clinical pastoral education. And I realized, and I did a paper on it, to touch my soul, comfort in the midst of pain. And so that is my ministry, not to sit down in the pews. As my bishop, now Archbishop, said, I have a passion for taking the church from in the pews to outside in the community. And although retired now, it is still my passion. I work with an after-school group, and that was something I humbly say, I don't boast about it, that I started 17 years ago for children in the last year of primary school, and it's only 15 because I don't believe in quantity, I believe in quality. And if you can touch them at this time, you allow them to grow. And it came about because when Yolande Ford was here, I don't know if you know Yolande Ford, she was doing a study for the Cayman Islands, and it was to be in the prison. And I was one of the persons chosen to go and to interview. And as I listened to those young men, those men, to hear, you started off with my childhood, to hear them go back to their childhood and what was inflicted on them in their childhood. I knew that something had to be done. Not all, because you can't save all, but had to be done for some of our children. We may have material things, but sometimes that touch of love. Go back to my young man at West St. Joseph, who likes me, who is willing to take that risk, despite of what behaviors I may show, who is willing to go beyond those behaviors and touch me. And so we have the program Tuesdays to Thursdays. We have a meal where they learn to set the table, they learn to sit at the table and have conversations, etc. This year they have been introduced to chess. We have some of the firms, they come on board and they volunteer. They learn about themselves, the world, they learn about the island. And this year we started where they can appreciate their culture. Not any culture anybody wants to impose on them, but their culture. To love who they are, to believe in who they are. I may be here all these years, I'm still a Bajan. And one thing that our pledge, that is an integral part of my life wherever I go. And I do not hesitate in letting people know I'm a Bajan, because I pledge allegiance to my country and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor. But this one is key. By my living, to do credit to my nation wherever I go. And I pray and I believe that with God's help, I am doing credit to my nation. But more than that, I believe I'm serving my God in the way that God has called me to. When did you see me hungry? When did you see me in prison? When did you see me naked? Whatever you do to the least of these, you do it to me. Have I made mistakes along the way? Sure, I have made mistakes along the way. But God has given me many chances to say I'm sorry and to do it over again. And even as I say that, I remember while I was at United Theological College of the West Indies, going over to the drug rehab, doing devotions and sharing with those who were there. And I remember prejudice can be a hell of a thing. I remember sharing with some young men and all of that. And it was just before breakfast. And while they were having their breakfast, they were having an Otahiti apple, Jamaican apple. I tasted it once, I didn't like the taste, and they offered me some of the apple. And without thinking, I said, no, thank you. And when I looked at their faces, I regretted what I had said. And I said, Lord, I messed up. Give me another chance. And I had to go to meet on one-on-one with another. And when I was finished with him, I came back. And this time they were around the table and they had cake. And one said, would you like a piece? And before he could finish, the other said, she don't eat from people like us. And I said to him, I'm sorry, but I said I didn't like the apple, but I should have tasted it. But I'm going to eat a bit of everybody's cake. If you give me a piece, I will sit and eat. And in eating, I said, Lord, thank you for giving me a second chance. So that is who Mary Graham, 70 years old. I think that is who she is. Mary Veronica Laurentia Graham, knee small. And I must say, I was glad to lose the name Small at one time because people used to call me Mary Biggs. But anyway, no one is an island. And I must, can't do this without saying thanks so much to my family, especially my husband, Desmond. We were friends from the time I was 15. And we got married in 1976. Yes. February 28th will be 49 years. When we were married, he never had any idea that I would be on this journey in ministry. Yet there has been never a day that he has said no. I remember when I was asked by a bishop who came here, and Desmond said to me, what did you and the bishop discuss? And I said, I will tell you later. And when I told him, he said, if that is what you believe God wants you to do, I will support you, go. And people said, but how can you give up your good job? One son is in college and the other son will soon finish high school. I remember one of my friends saying that, how are you going to manage? And she was kind of embarrassed and she said, but you must know. And I said, no, I don't. God knows. And not one day did Desmond say, we are not doing as well as we should because you made this decision. He was behind me all the way. The children were behind me all the way. I remember when he would come to visit sometimes in Jamaica, and I would have a paper to finish. And I would say, but Des, I have a paper to finish. He said, no, man, you do your paper. It was a little cubicle. Just tell the girls I am here. And I would tell them, and he became their Uncle Des. And he would sit up, and I would finish the paper. Atlanta, when he could come, he would come. Never once did he complain that I had left them alone. Mommy came, and she looked after the household for me. She has always been there for me. Nicholas is my firstborn. He was there. Andrew is my secondborn. And they have always support me. Not once did they say, Mommy, we can't do this because you... No. I remember once when Nicholas came home from college and he had his hair twist. And somebody said to him, I wonder what your mommy will say about that. And he said, but my mommy not like that. And when I heard the story, I said, hair twist, hair normal, whatever, he's my son. Andrew, when Andrew was going off now, he asked if he could have an ear pierce. We were away. And we came back, we saw 2 earrings. And Desmond said, boy, your mother is a priest and you have 2 earrings. Wait till you get to college and put them in. And Andrew said, but that will be hypocrisy. And I said, it's all right with Mommy. You're still my son. It's fine. Des now, that's my grandson. That's our pride and joy. He is 13 years old. And in his way too, he has supported me. When I turned 60, I think it was about 66 or so. One day he looked at me after I brought him from swimming and he said, Grandma, I don't want you to celebrate any more birthdays. And I said, but why not, Des? He said, because I don't want you to die. I said to him, Des, we have no choice over that. Whenever God is ready, Grandma will die. But what we can do is make the most of the moments we have together. I could not be the kind of teacher, the kind of pastor, and now even in retirement, I am doing a whole lot of things without their support. They are my unsung heroes. They love me and they know that I love them. My daughter-in-law, she too is apart. I should say, well, that is Andrew's wife, the last one's wife. Nicholas is divorced and his girlfriend, although I say I would not get into their business, but she is very dear to me too. And so I have much to be thankful for. In 2012, for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, I don't wear it, but I have it in my drawer. The Cayman Islands government, in recognition of my services in these islands, gave me a Medal of Honor, an officer class, and I am very grateful to them. But nothing I did for recognition. I did it for love of God and love of people. I thank them for all the honors that I've received. I was one of the 100 women in the Cayman Islands. But nothing compares to two things. Last year when it was my birthday, the Penn children, nobody told them to have a little. I had the party, but they made little cards. And some of the cards said, my BFF. For a 10-year-old to say a 70-year-old is their BFF, it speaks volumes. I was thinking of giving up the Penn program, giving up my involvement because I'm now the coordinator. I will in time. And this little one said, I am coming back next year. I just love to go. I said, no, you'll be in high school. He said, yeah, but I'll come back and look for you. I said, but I won't be here. I'm not doing it anymore. She said to me, you forget I know where you live? I'm going to come there and drag you out the house. And with her saying that, I said, okay, I will give it another year. These are the things that touch me deeply. I also thank the many parents, the principals whom I work with. When I came here, I was a shy. I would work, but behind the scenes, I was not a. And I remember Miss Lucille Seymour. She was my first principal. I worked with her for a year. I went to another school and she requested me back. And she said when she saw how I got down on the floor with the children and interacted, she needed me. And I'm not a sports person, but she asked me to plan the Georgetown Primary Sports Day. And I planned it. I love to plan. And while I was there waiting for her to come and welcome the parents to the sports day, she placed the microphone in my hand and she said, you did all the work. Welcome the parents. And so I thank her a lot. And all the many persons, all the many sisters God has blessed me with here that have encouraged me and reminded me to maintain my focus. I'm Mary Graham. I'm a wife, mother, grandmother, and someone who loves the people God places in my path. I'm just another Bajan.